Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about relationships. Whether you're in a current relationship or you're single, you're going to want to tune in. Now, we are rewinding the clock to take a look at our relationship blueprints. How did they form? Where are they dysfunctional? And what we can do about it. And my hope is that this month you're going to gain some insights to make your relationships more fulfilling, more intimate, and ultimately more soul satisfying. So join me and let's start the conversation.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everybody, it is Mary, and I am so excited about today's podcast episode because this month we are talking all about relationships, and I've talked about my journey. I have brought on Lindsley. We've talked about adult dating, and I thought, all right, I need a different perspective here. Somebody who has been married for a long time, somebody who is seasoned in the art of understanding the ups and the downs and everything in between as it relates to relationships, and how can you continue to grow and develop as a person and as a couple when you are married for an extended period of time. So I'm excited because what you're about to hear is an interview I got to do with Kathryn Ely, who is a woman in her 50s. She started out in law school. She's been a stay-at-home mom. She's kind of had that experience of watching everybody pursue what they love. And then she went back to school, and over the course of several years, she kind of found herself again. And now she is a licensed counselor and a purpose and productivity coach who lives in Birmingham, Alabama. And Kathryn, she's been married for 25 years. And I feel like for anyone who has been married for that long, they have got some serious wisdom to share. And it is just perfect that she is also a counselor and a coach, because she gets to bring in a lot of stories of her clients and things that she's, seen that have been relationship issues that her clients, her people that are using her for her coaching services are like, hey, listen, this is what I'm dealing with. And she gets to see kind of the common pitfalls that we fall into when we look at intimate long-term relationships. So she is just an amazing spirit. She has so much wisdom, and it was just such a pleasure to get to interview Kathryn and talk about what it looks like to be in a healthy long-term relationship. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Kathryn. Hey y'all, it is Mary, and man, I'm so excited to dive into this very special episode today with my special guest. But before I bring her on, as you guys know, we've got just an awesome topic this month. We are talking all about relationships, and it is a tricky conversation because you can really go every which way as you think about relating to somebody, relating to yourself inside of our relationships, conflict, boundaries. I mean, the list goes on. And I feel like we could have so many different conversations. And if you've tuned into the past two episodes, on the first week, we talked all about intimacy and what it looks like to start with a relationship with yourself, and then bring that into the relationship as a whole self, and bringing in the ability to cultivate space for deep conversations, for vulnerability, for honesty, and the foundations of intimacy inside of a relationship. So if you haven't checked out that episode, make sure to go back, give it a listen. I've got just like amazing reviews from that one. I actually had a Fully Alive Circle member come in, and she said that she listened to it twice and then decided to invite her husband to listen to it with her. And they ended up having a conversation that they've been needing to have for a long time as a result of that podcast episode. So it facilitated some pretty cool conversations between them. And then last week, if you guys tuned in, Lindsley, my part-time co-host, and we got together and we talked about dating life, the old single life. And man, just what it looks like to date as an adult and how that is so much different than when we were in our 20s. And so you're definitely going to want to check that out if you are single, even if you have a partner, maybe you're not fully committed as it looks like in marriage. Definitely check out that episode as well. But for today's conversation, I thought I would bring in an expert of marriage, not only from her own personal experience, but also as a licensed counselor and coach as well. Man, Kathryn, I'm just so excited to have you on the show today. I can't wait to jump into everything, but welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm so excited to be here, but if my husband listens to that intro, he's going to laugh.
Well, it's funny, as I was saying it, I was like, the term expert at marriage, I think is hilarious, right? It's like, obviously there are so many ups and downs of any relationship, but just the fact that, hey, it's what, you guys have been married 26 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a victory. I mean, I feel like that's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the even bigger victory is if I had the chance today, I wouldn't trade him in for anybody else.
Man, that's the part that he needs to hear right there. That is awesome. It's one of those situations where you don't find that many people who have been married for that long. I'm really grateful that I have parents who have been married for 50 years, I think now, and have a really beautiful relationship. They have really worked at continuing to grow together, to grow in their relationship to themselves as well as their relationship to one another. And I've gotten to witness what it looks like to do a lot of things right. And yet I know that is really rare. And that's why I'm excited to have your input, not only as somebody who has been married for a long time, but also as a therapist. I mean, that's just such a unique come from. And, I want to get into some fun little questions here in a bit, but I would love for you to just share a little bit about your journey, and kind of primarily, if you're willing to, just share a little bit about your marriage journey, sort of what that's looked like and some of the ways that it's evolved over time, and just kind of help us get a better sense of you as a person and inside of this relationship.
Yeah, well, I'm a recovering attorney. So before I was a counselor, I was a lawyer, and my husband's a lawyer. And we met in law school, and I was very rigid with my rules, and that's another conversation for another day. But when I went to law school, I was like, I am not dating any of these nerdy law school guys. Like, that's just off the table. And I met him, and he actually knew my sister in undergrad. And I met him when we first got to school. Didn't like him, didn't think he liked me at all. Like, we just did not hit it off. But something happened later on in law school, and I was like, well, I guess that rule is going out the window. We got engaged about a month after, no, not even a month after, right after graduation. And I will say, though, that night we were both 20. I was 25. He was 26 when we got married, which is young. It was young then. It's really young now, right? People are getting married later, every generation. But I just remember having a bit of a panic that night that we got engaged, and said to Brennan, my husband now, I said, how can we promise each other that we're going to love each other and be together for the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know. We're going to have to take it day by day. All I know is I don't want to live without you.
Wow.
And it was really like that moment I realized how much he understood me and who I am. And that's definitely part of it. But there are definitely ups and downs, because the stress of what goes on outside of your marriage comes into your marriage.
Yeah.
Right? If he's struggling in his job, it's going to come into our marriage. If we're struggling with a problem with one of our children, and we are seeing it a little bit differently, maybe what we each think the solution is, that's going to cause some friction. So there are a few basic things that I think, just based on my own experience and what I've seen in life, that relationships that endure have in common.
Yeah. I would love to hear what those are.
I think it is respect for each other, liking each other, and shared values. If you have those three things, you can weather just about any storm, and you can change as a person and evolve as a person, but your values always bring you back together.
Yeah.
So you can change and evolve and grow together, especially if you have that respect and that like. I like to talk to my husband. One of my favorite things that we do together is get up on Saturday morning and Sunday morning and take our dogs for a walk.
Mm.
And for about 45 minutes, talk about whatever. So I think really liking each other and respecting each other goes a long way to be able to continue down the path.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, that saying that I'm not exactly sure how it goes, but basically there will come a point where you look at the other person that you're married to and you think, I hate you. Like there are those moments where you just go, oh God, you're just getting on my everlasting nerve. And it doesn't start out that way, obviously. I mean, from the day one, the reason you end up getting together is because you like each other. Like that almost seems like the easy part. And yet, as time goes on, sometimes that sort of ability to look at somebody and go, I actually like you. Like, I want to spend time with you. I enjoy your presence. I want to be near you. And I'm sure you've dealt with that. Maybe if it's not in your own relationship, clients who've come in who've sort of lost that enjoyment of their partner, lost that desire to want to be near them or know them or have those conversations or times together. Um, for couples like that, when you see that the likability factor go down and there's more, either maybe resentment has come into play, maybe frustration has come into play, do you think that there's a way to cultivate that again, like to get that likability factor with your spouse back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see it a lot. I help a lot of women who, their kids are going off to college. They've stayed at home with their kids. They've taken care of their kids. And these kids have been the center of their lives. And then they're like, this is my second chapter. I don't know what to do. And part of it is I've grown apart from my husband.
Yeah.
I've put my kids first. We've put our kids first. And we haven't spent the time cultivating that relationship, and we're really out of touch. So whether you just aren't really feeling the love or the like of your spouse, or you feel like there's this distance that might be insurmountable, you can get it back. If you go back to what was it at the beginning? What attracted me to this person? And not just what attracted me, but what did we enjoy doing together? What did we spend our time together enjoying? And so you get back to doing some of those things, having that date night, watching a movie, having a conversation about a book that you've read, is what I like to start with. It's getting back to the behaviors, the actions. And when you start in with those behaviors, the feelings can come back.
Real quick before we finish today's episode, I am so excited to share a new resource with you. I have created a quick date night questions PDF guide, and it's yours all for free. Y'all, I know that creating honesty and intimacy in a relationship is a little bit harder than it sounds, and sometimes we need help to invite our relationships into a deeper level. So I've created 10 questions you and your partner can ask each other on your regular date nights. So follow the link below or head on over to maryhyatt.com/date night to snag your PDF question guide to pull out on your next date. All right, so back to this week's episode. It's almost like sort of acting before you feel like it. And then
you have to act before you feel like it. You absolutely do.
I think that's really important because as you're talking, what I'm thinking about is I think there comes a point when you've gone so long. And I'm divorced. So I was married for almost 10 years and ended up getting divorced, and know so much more, I feel like, now than I did. So I mentioned in the first episode that had I known what I know now, I'd probably still be married, but at the time it was like, first of all, there wasn't that respect, but I think that there was this apathy, like sort of like, I've done all I can do, and like, this person's not going to change, and I don't really have the energy to keep trying at it. And I didn't come from the mindset of do the things that we were doing at the beginning and then sort of see what unfolds and what follows. It was sort of like, well, the way I feel today is not that great about this person, or I'm not really, I don't want to put in the effort to pursue, or, again, coming from a story of, well, I'm always the one to initiate, or I'm always the one to have to try to repair this. And it blocks you. I mean, it blocks you from even the possibility of having that kind of connection. So when you have clients who come in and they've sort of gotten themselves at a place where they're just not putting in the effort, they're just sort of apathetic towards it. Is there any way that you encourage your clients, or that you've seen that's been successful, and sort of to get outside of that window of apathy and into more of the willingness to take some action? Like, how do you get from apathy to action?
Yeah, so I take that individual, right, unless it's couples therapy, but I take that individual who might be feeling that way, and I look at the 8 domains in his or her life, but especially the intimate love relationship domain, and I get back to values.
Mm.
So, I do this chart on my whiteboard, and I write down story, and then a column of values, and then a column of action. And I'll say, what is your story in the intimate love relationship domain? What are your limiting beliefs? Is it, I always need to do more? I'm not enough? Is it, I'm unlovable? Generally, there's something there that's blocking them, that's entering the picture. And then, what do you value? What do you want to be known for in this relationship? What is most important to you in this relationship?
Mm.
And get back in touch with those two things. Am I listening to all these negative stories, and that is what is making me apathetic? Or am I not in touch with my values? I'm kind of floating around, not knowing what action to take. Is that what's making me apathetic? Or is it, and this is always a possibility, that we don't share the same values?
Mm-hmm.
That I'm apathetic because I don't feel heard. I'm apathetic because I don't feel like we're on the same path. I'm apathetic that I have tried every form of communication and he or she is just not hearing me. And that's something that you want to realize as well, right? You don't want to float there in the middle, not knowing what to do, feeling a certain way, thinking a certain way, but not being able to act on it. And when we get down back to the core of what is most important to you, you can see, do these line up with my significant other? Is this something that I want to fight for? Or is this something that I want to let go of? And either way, you got to get to the point where you know which way you want to go.
Mm. Just having that clarity versus sort of being in the constant questioning, which is just so exhausting. But being willing to admit one way or the other, hey, this is the truth here. I'm not living in the story of it, but here are some of these facts as it relates to values, can be really freeing. I mean, it kind of gives you that ability to decide where you're putting your energy and how you're showing up. And as you were talking, you mentioned communication. And this is something that I really wanted to talk with you about today, because to me, and this is so funny, I've been watching on Netflix, because what else are we doing? I've been watching the new series of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Okay. Mm-hmm. So one of the common things that comes up are, some relational dynamics between family members. And I was just watching this episode last night, and it was between a father and a daughter, and the daughter had kind of become estranged. Anyways, they orchestrate them coming back together, and they had this beautiful conversation, and it was healing, and there was forgiveness involved, and there was just this amazing opportunity for growth inside of their relationship. And what you realize, and sort of my takeaway from this, was when you can just have the conversation with the person who's caused the pain or caused the hurt and really talk about it, so much can come from that. And yet, the thing that I see as a coach, and I'm sure you see as a therapist, that happens so often, is that people are terrified of dealing with conflict and dealing with the things that get triggered from their significant other. There's this like breakdown in communication. And yet that seems to be one of those tenets that is foundational for a successful relationship, is the ability to communicate and to process through conflict. And yet, at least in my experience, I never saw my parents fight. They would, if they did, that was in their own time. So I never got to see what it looked like to have healthy conflict, healthy discussions, to resolve issues. I never saw that. So that was a very foreign idea. And to me, fighting was bad. I had this idea that if you fought, if there was disagreement, then that wasn't a healthy relationship. So I would love to hear, maybe from a personal side first, and then also from the therapeutic side, sort of how you approach conflict. Like, where have you in your own relationship learned how to navigate through conflict, and then how you help your clients as well get comfortable with this idea of fighting well?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that whether it's in my own life or what I tell clients, it comes from the same place. It's start with how you feel. Don't start with pointing fingers at the other person. You made me feel like this, or you did this, or you did that. It automatically, I mean, have you ever seen a cat when they get scared and their back comes up and the hair? That's what you're doing to the other person. You're getting them in that kind of fight, flight, or freeze mode where they're going to become defensive, their heart rate's going to go up, and it's not going to lead to a calm, collected conversation where you are using the front part of your brain instead of being ruled by emotion. So I would say don't start from a place of high emotion when you're going to discuss an important topic.
So does that mean that, like, let's say something happens in the moment, you wait and you sort of let yourself simmer before you talk about it? I mean, is that necessary, or is it just more about sort of that first initial sentence or come from that you sort of maybe relate it to yourself rather than starting out with blaming?
So that's a great question. It can be either or both. If you know that you're a very impulsive, reactive person, it might mean taking a few breaths, walking out of the room, and coming back when you feel a little bit more calm and you've collected your thoughts. Because if that reactive person is very keyed up, he or she is more likely to say something that they're going to regret or that's going to be difficult to take back.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one aspect of it. But I think the other aspect is coming at it from, I mean, let's I don't know, take the example of it really, this is just completely made up. I can't think of anything great right now. So say I really want my husband to be unloading the dishwasher every morning, and he walks around and does his business, whatever, gets his coffee, does what he needs to do. And I feel like, well, he's just letting me do one more thing. Okay. That's just not the best example in the world, but it's just what came into my head right now. I can go at it and I can say, you never do anything for me. You never do anything to help. You just go on about your business. Or I could say, you know what, honey? I have a long list of things that I have to do in the morning, and it would be such a great help to me if you could unload the dishwasher. If that means getting up 5 minutes early, or, it would really be a huge help to me if you could just unload the dishwasher. And he'll probably start unloading the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Or I can turn it into a huge thing. Now, insert your own example there.
Right.
But it's just in how you go about doing it.
It makes total sense. And what this makes me think of, and something that I've learned from my coach, is this idea of agreements versus expectations. And so often we operate in the land of assuming our partner knows what it is that we need help with, or what it is that we would appreciate or expect them to do, which of course, when they don't do that thing, it creates a lot of frustration and anger and resentment. And the flip side of that is agreement, which is where you are able to, like exactly what you're saying, share. This would be so helpful, and get the other person to agree, where you're coming at it from the same page. They agree to do it. Like, hey, would you be willing to help me and unload the dishwasher? Would you be willing to pick up the kids from school? Would you be willing to do this? And then they have the opportunity to say yes or no, but you're working towards the agreement where everybody sort of knows up front, on the same page. Here it is. It's clear. There's no question. It's not in the realm of expectation. It's said, it's out in the open. And then it's like, okay, now we can move forward, and everybody kind of is on that same page. And I think it gets tricky when couples enter into a space of consistent conflict, where the only way they know how to speak to one another is in that sort of heightened emotional state. Do you think that fighting is good in a relationship, or is that a sign that there's something else that's wrong, and it's a warning sign? Like, what's your stance on conflict and fighting? Hey, y'all. I'm sure you've been hearing me mention my Fully Alive Circle membership, and you might be wondering what it is and how you can join. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So the Circle membership is a safe place for women to gather together in a heart-centered community to take this deep dive into personal transformation. So it's my online membership where you'll learn how to find yourself again through daily devotional practices. Inside of our private Facebook group, I share resources like guided meditations, yoga practices, essential oil recipes, journal prompts, and so much more that dive into our monthly topic that we explore right here on the Living Fully Alive podcast. And all those resources are delivered to your inbox weekly to help you create powerful change in your life. So if you're looking for an affordable way to continue your journey of living fully alive, then definitely check out the Fully Alive Circle membership. Just go to maryhyatt.com/circle, and you can find out all the details and join. All right, now back to this week's episode.
I'm not opposed to a little bit of conflict, maybe not fighting, but a little bit of arguing. I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It kind of, once again, depends on how you approach it. I don't think it's good if you're arguing every day about everything, but I think it's more behind, does each person feel like he or she can use their voice and have the other person not leave. I think it's the security of knowing this person loves me, this person's going to listen to me, and I can disagree, stand up for myself, make my point, and at least feel the security of he or she's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some ways too, and I think this is the work as somebody who's not married, divorced, but in a serious committed relationship. One of the other things that I have to kind of have the conversation with myself is, if when I show up as my authentic self, and let's say I have an opinion or disagree with something, that I have to I've had to make peace with the fact that if my person can't handle that, and for whatever reason could be a deal breaker or whatever, that I've got to kind of know I can be okay alone. Right? Sort of that like thing of like, if this means that for whatever reason, the relationship has to end, that I'm not willing to go quiet. This could go into extremes, but I mean, I think from the healthiest place possible, like sort of like it's okay if this ends up where I'm alone. Like I will survive. I'll be okay.
So I work with women all the time and men too. In fact, I did this exercise today with a client of how do you set firm boundaries in a relationship,
Mm,
right? How do you speak up for yourself and set the boundaries that are healthy for you? And it's once again, it is getting out my chart, and I like to think of in systems and equations, and the equation for setting firm boundaries, knowing if a relationship is going down the path you want it to, or it's time to get out, is you have to value yourself above all else. So you have to do the work to have the self-worth and the value, and you have to know it. And then you have to get in touch with your values. So valuing yourself, connecting with your values equals a strong self who creates the boundaries that are necessary to have the relationship that you want. And I see so many women that sort of think they know themselves going into a relationship, and then they start morphing and turning into whatever they think the other person wants them to be.
yep.
And that leads to, really not feeling your self-worth, right? It leads to questioning yourself, questioning your judgment, can lead you down all sorts of negative paths. So it's valuing yourself and get in touch with your values. Then you have a list of what you have to have in that other person for you to continue down the road with them, whatever that looks like for you. You also know if they don't have one of those values, that it's a non-negotiable and you're not willing to bend or break on that one.
Mm. That honestly is such a hard place, I think, to get to, because you have to have such a strong sense of self-worth that you're willing to sort of choose being alone over sacrificing some of those values. And I think that's a journey. I mean, I know that even for myself, I've been on that journey of the sort of willingness to say, you know what? I've already, for me, I've already done that. I've already been in a relationship where I completely lost myself and compromised my values and who I was, and had to come through the painful journey of being alone and making peace with being alone. And even now in a committed relationship, sort of being willing to put that stake in the ground, which I think it's interesting with boundaries. And I know that this is one of your favorite things to talk about. And I'm so glad, because I think like from being from the South, boundaries are tricky. Like, as a woman, having healthy boundaries, you have all the stereotypes. Oh, she's a bitch. Oh, she's too strong. I mean, all the different kind of horrible things that people say about women who have boundaries. And it feels like I can't be loved if I hold my ground, that somebody will just think I'm being too intense or too rigid or whatever that might be. And so for somebody who doesn't have a great history with knowing how to set boundaries, I'm imagining that this is not just like throw yourself in the deep end of the pool, sort of line is drawn in the sand. Like, how do you help your clients sort of tiptoe into the shallow end of setting boundaries to where they get more comfortable using their voice? Like, what is sort of some of those like not too risky boundaries that we can begin to set that boosts our boundary confidence?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't, part of it is a mindset shift. So, like what you just said a minute ago about it's hard to sort of let go of that relationship and choose to be alone. It's sort of a shift of, I'm not choosing to be alone. I'm choosing to give myself an opportunity to find something that's closer to my ideal and exactly what I want.
That's
It's
good.
sort of learning, it's re-indoctrinating yourself from everything that we learned as women growing up in the South,
Right.
right? Be polite. Everyone needs to like you. And when you're taught that everyone needs to like you, you're going to bend and do what you think everyone else wants you to do. So part of it is peeling through the layers of what you tell yourself. What are your shoulds that you've been living by? What are your shoulds that you've been hanging on to that have kept you from really looking at, what do I want? Not what do other people want from me? What do I want? So we do a lot of work of changing that mindset to where it's not selfish to ask yourself what you want.
Yeah.
And we start with very simple decisions in between sessions. Every day, I want you to ask yourself what you want when you think about whatever this is, about when you're going to get coffee or whatever it is. And it's indoctrinating yourself to ask yourself what you want so that you learn that it's okay to ask what you want. And it's also the realization that when we don't have boundaries, we give and we give and we give, and everybody continues to take. And then for some reason, we're like, we don't understand why we don't ever get what we need in return.
Right.
It's because we're teaching others that they can treat us that way. So the other part of the mindset is realizing that we teach others how to treat us through the boundaries that we set.
That's so good. I mean, it's just, let's have a moment of pause of that, because that is the key. I mean, we are setting up the dynamic, whether we realize it or not, whether it's conscious or unconscious. We're creating what we tolerate, what we allow, what is acceptable inside of our relationships. And obviously this goes into beyond just a spousal committed partner relationship. This is true for friends and families, work partners, whatever. And I think that's so powerful to sort of digest, that we are setting up that dynamic of how people can treat us, what we allow. And to begin to, like you said, go, wait a minute, how do I feel about this? What is my preference? What do I want? Having that little bit of vote and choice. Like, I know for me, when I started this inside my marriage, it was not being so, not complying with everything. So like, I learned as a woman in the South that the best thing that you could be is easy. Right.
Yeah.
So like
low maintenance, right?
Low maintenance. And so my ex-husband would say, well, what do you want to do? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm easy. And that was like, I mean, that was my mantra. I'm easy. It doesn't matter. I'm easy, which meant I never actually really got what I wanted. I never did what I was desiring, because I was sort of placating and just saying, hey, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so part of what I started to do in this journey of sort of building these small boundaries over time was just like, he'd say, well, where do you want to eat? And for the first time, it was like, eye-opening moment of just saying, oh, I get to have a vote here. Doesn't mean that I always get what I want, but that I get a say-so. I get a vote. I have a preference. And so it became this journey of have a preference in everything. And again, I don't have to be attached to it or married to it. Like, again, sometimes it doesn't work out that your vote gets chosen, but it's like, I am going to practice. And it really became a spiritual practice of having a preference in everything. And that led to, and I think what you're saying is that leads to these boundaries that, like, I'm a person with preference, and that might be in discord or disagreement with your preference or what you might want. And gosh, I just love that idea, though, of just setting it up for how people can treat you based on that. Huge.
Yeah. I mean, I get to decide. I can have my hours. I can go to work at 7 every day and work till 7 every night, 5 days a week. Or I can choose to see clients 3 or 4 days a week and tell them when my openings are. It's
Right.
like that, but in every area of your life.
Yeah. And how important to do that inside of your relationship. And honestly, one of the other things I'm thinking about is we think of typically boundaries as saying no, but I think in terms of relationships, we can have boundaries in saying yes. So like, saying like one of our boundaries is that, on Thursday night, we create space for us to go on a date night, and no matter what else comes in, we have a boundary that we say no. And so that we can say yes to this date night, or like you guys, one of your rituals is this walk on Saturday mornings. And I love like that. That's a boundary. Like, no, this is our time for walking. This is, nothing else gets precedence. Like this is our walk time. This is our connection time. I would love to know from you, like if you can kind of think back over 26 years of being, is it Brennan? Is that his name?
Yes.
Being
Yes.
with Brennan and thinking about the things that have made your relationship successful or able to kind of weather what you've gone through, just being a human being and going through life together. What would be some of your like little secrets to a healthy relationship?
I think I appreciate you asking me that because once again, like I just don't feel like an expert in this, but I can give examples. I think leaning toward each other. I think being very open, attentive, and leaning toward each other when the other reaches out. It can be a very simple thing, right? It's instead of being on your phone after dinner when it's time to wind down, have a conversation, be fully present, and lean into your relationship and realize that what you put into it is definitely what you get back out of it.
Mm,
So lean in and be receptive of when you think your spouse, significant other, um, may need a little extra from you, and be that extra without them having to ask.
mm. I love that. I mean, it's really the art of presence, just being present. I mean, because when you are in the real space here and now, you pick up on those little things from your partner when they're exhausted, when they're feeling depleted, even without them having to communicate. Usually you can sense that. Um, what are some of the things that, and you can use your own life for this example or your client's life, but what are some of the pitfalls or the mistakes that you see that just really lead to a place of disconnection? Like what are some of those things that have you've noticed in your own relationships that you've had to self-correct, or even inside of your clients' relationships?
I think if you don't have a plan for the future and have shared goals that have been communicated, like I like to have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan. It doesn't have to be ridiculously detailed, but it gives you chances to have conversations and dream and plan and work toward things together. For instance, if we wanted to retire together in 10 years and move somewhere else, well, we need to know what the other person is thinking about. Does one person is thinking California and the other person is thinking North Carolina? That could
Right.
cause a problem, right? If you don't have that communication and you're not talking about these things along the way, how are you going to stay on the same path? If you don't know how much money you think you need to have for retirement, you could have one person in the relationship spending everything, one person in the relationship trying to hang on to everything. And what kind of conflict is going to come out of that?
Right.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge conflict. So I think having consistent conversations about where you want to be as individuals and where you want to be as a couple in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and 10 years down the road means that you're communicating and you have the chance to have these hopes and dreams that you share together, and that at least that your ones that you have separately are in line with each other.
It's so powerful because you're right. So often we spend a lot of energy and time on our own personal goals and thinking about how we want to move into our own future, but to pause and sort of like bring that to the table to see, okay, what are the goals of the family, for this family unit, for the two of us, for retirement, all of that. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's the ability to talk about that ahead of time is so powerful. I know I've witnessed that with my own parents, and they actually go so far. My dad is a goal setting master. He teaches on this, he does courses on this. And so they actually teach too, like even in their work. So when they have their employees do goal setting for the beginning of the year, they have a whole day where they set aside this as a company, as a team. They have their employees bring in their spouses for that day to make sure that what they're creating is aligned with what their spouse is wanting for their trajectory of that year as well, and just how important it is to be on the same page for some of those bigger decisions that require sacrifice or presence of the other person involved. Huge.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, if you're not communicating about it, you're not sharing your hopes and dreams, you could be slowly but surely diverging, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and not even knowing it.
know it yet, right? It's happening in your head, but it is going to happen in your life if you're not planning. If you're not planning.
It really is. I mean, just what I'm getting out of this conversation is this willingness to be present with one another, have conversations. And, the other thing that I'm curious, and we'll kind of like wrap up with this idea, is that one of the things that I haven't been through enough life yet to speak from a place of true experience, although I feel like I agree with this. But one of the things that I've heard is that, like, I have a friend of mine, and they are in their 70s, I think. And he always says, man, I have been in many relationships in my life. I have been in love with many women in my life, and they're all, and he says, with his wife. And this idea that as human beings, we change and we grow and we become different people. And, the saying is every 7 years, we're a whole new person. And you hear about the 7-year itch as one of those times. And that's really like the life cycle, I think, of a relationship. And a spiritual teacher of mine has always said, every 7 years, you should be coming back to the table and saying, hey, do we want to re-enroll and do another 7 years?
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of acknowledging that, after a good amount of time, you are a different person with different interests, with, having grown, having developed. And I would love just to hear from you, like, how you navigate when your person is starting to change and you see them changing, and they're becoming somebody different than maybe you knew when you were first married. How do you create space for that change? And have you seen anything that's helpful, and just sort of like the way you think about relationships evolving over time?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I think it's a combination of doing what we talked about a few minutes ago, keeping in connection and planning that future, but also being secure enough in yourself and in the boundaries you've set up and in what you value and in what your relationship is, to not be afraid to let the other person change, right? To not hold on to these expectations of this is what I bought into, this is who I married, and this person must stay the same throughout his or her whole entire life. It's once again comes back to liking and supporting. My husband was the one who helped me figure out what I was going to do in the next chapter of my life. He was like, I think you could be a great counselor. That's what you do for people. I really think you should go back to school. And I'm like, but we have 3 kids. I have a part-time job. All of our kids are at home. You're going to have to do this, this, and this for me to do this. He said, I'll do it. And so it's not letting go of that connection and that path and that dreaming together, but also not being afraid to not only let the other person be what they need to become, but lift them up and help them do that.
Yeah. Wow. So beautiful. And what a gift to be able to give to the other person, to create that space for change, and then having that reciprocal respect of being able to change yourself. And I mean, that to me is freedom, is the ability to change and to grow and to evolve, and also get to do that at your own speed, but near one another, next to one another, encouraging that in the other person. Like, I think that's so powerful. I know my partner now, we deeply encourage that growth in one another. We kind of like your husband, like, you got it, go for it, do it, like, amazing. Like, it's just, there's no better joy than for me to be able to see my partner become even more of who he is and discover new things about what he loves and how he is stepping into different seasons of his life. It's like, oh, it makes me fall in love with him all over again. It's beautiful to witness.
I think you've said one of the keys to a great relationship right there. Like when you give someone that freedom, then
Yeah.
they don't feel stuck, right? They may be in this relationship with the same person for all these years, but they're growing, they're changing, they're thriving, and they don't feel stuck. So they want to come back to you again and again.
Gosh, that is so true. Yeah. Sort of like go out there and know that I'm here. Come back. I'll celebrate with you. I mean, I think that's a big thing I have learned is just the willingness to celebrate more than you think you need to. Celebrate the other person's win, celebrate the little things as well as the big things, and being willing to just stay in that space of, yes, you got this, go, go, go,
Definitely.
I have just loved this conversation, and I'm just so grateful for your wisdom as somebody who is younger and is in a second relationship, having one that has failed. It's just beautiful to get to hear your wisdom and your journey, and I don't take that for granted. And I just thank you for sharing. And I'm sure your clients would have the same sentiment of just being so grateful for you. And I would love for people to be able to stay connected with you and connect with you. So if you could share where people can find you, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I have a podcast called Imperfect Thriving. So as I sit here and give all this advice today, please understand that I am by no means perfect. I make mistakes every single day. The difference is I don't let them hold me back. And so you can go to imperfectthriving.com and find the podcast there. I also have a Blueprint to Thrive that you can, it's a free email course that you can get to help you sort of get in touch with what you value, what your limiting beliefs are, and what actions you can take in the different areas of your life. And then I love Instagram as well. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group, Imperfect Thriving Facebook group, and then at Imperfect Thriving on Instagram. So reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link all of that in the show link so you can follow Kathryn. And thank you. Just what a gift this conversation has been. And I know that it has been for my audience as well. So thank you for your time and your knowledge, and look forward to staying in connection. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And for everybody who is listening, I hope that you tune in next week. We've got one final episode for this month in relationships. And just to remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.